everyone. All day yesterday, I felt like this Andy GIF. Like, every time I would open up Twitter, every time I would open up a new little clip that had been made of the past 10 minutes or whatever from all the testimony. And these are the highlights. This is what I think are the highlights. Here's Vasi Kapoulas to intro us into the we section. Craig and Mark Keilburger testify portion of our coverage this morning. Okay, Vasi, she says, CK, that's Craig Keilburger. He says, the fallout now from this political process has resulted in serious challenges that risk the entire organization and 25 years of work. Well, I mean, at least he understands what's at stake here. And Anthony Furey, he says, Michelle Douglas says Craig Keilburger asked her to step down as board chair after she asked for documents about financials, staff layoffs amidst the pandemic. Now, from minutes 7 to 11 and a half minutes where she gives her testimony here. This is the full testimony, by the way. It's got Pierre Polieviere, and it's got all of everybody asking questions, right? So this is a worthwhile link to have if you've got it. All I've got queued up from it at this point in time, we've got the Pierre Polieviere clip. Oh, maybe I should play it on this. I'm going to probably queue up the Pierre Polieviere clip on here, so give me a minute to set that up. But because the sound's a lot better, and I'm worried the sound on Twitter will not be great. Okay, this I'm going to play for you in a minute, but not all of it, and I'm going to read this thread. Okay, back to Anthony Furey. She also says the board was under the impression that we speakers were never paid. Douglas says the board was interested in getting as much information as possible about transfers of funds between various we operations. It appears the board wasn't even fully aware of what was going on. Quote, we were pushing for information about financials, jobs, says Douglas. Keilburgers kept claiming they were daily reports, and the board asked to see them. The information was never provided, although we asked, and they in fact demanded. When she pressed the issue the hardest in March, quote, the call was abruptly concluded by Mark. He hung up, and then it seems Craig called right after and told her to step down, to resign. Michelle Douglas says she isn't familiar enough with We Charity Foundation, the real estate holding company that goes to the contract, to discuss it. Charlie Angus then asks, but did they even have any experience doing anything? Not to my knowledge, she answers. Are you aware of how many entities exist under the We banner? I don't know the actual number, no. Wow, this is the person who was chair of the board for a decade. Wow. She says more than 400 employees were set to be let go in March, and that they had 1,000 employees. That sounds like a massive number of staff for even a large charity. No. Douglas adds that one of the Keilburgers traveled to Kenya twice amidst all the difficulties, and that she wanted to know why but was not told. It seems like these trips were likely prior to the travel ban but happened pretty close to it. I certainly would acknowledge that there are many entities associated with the We brand generally. The board was always interested to get more insight, information, and details about these relationships. Basically admits board couldn't even navigate the labyrinth. So it was so complicated that the people who were in charge of the labyrinth of different companies and where the money was coming into and going out of, etc., they didn't know. So here she is, and I'll just give her a few 30 seconds, maybe 40 seconds, just to give you a taste of the story. It's like sitting down across from a friend who's got fired, and the do not disclose has been opened up, right? And you're just like, they did what? They did what after that? Here we go.
Passion for the organization, it was a difficult decision for me to tender my resignation. I did not resign as a routine matter or as part of a planned board transition. I resigned because I could not do my job. I could not discharge my governance duties. In March, the We Charity executive team were scrambling to contend with the impacts of the pandemic, and they began to lay off large numbers of staff. As the days went by, the number of job losses grew quickly into the hundreds. The board felt, of course, a duty to protect the organization and to consider the interests of its stakeholders, including its employees, its donors, partners, beneficiaries, and others. I convened an ad hoc committee of the board to hold daily calls with the executive team for briefings and updates, and we provided key updates in turn to the board at large. The committee made requests of the We Charity executive team that we considered necessary for the board to discharge its oversight duties. By March 23rd, aside from verbal briefings, we had not seen any written evidence, reports, or raw data to support the drastic measures that were being taken by the organization. Our oral briefings were largely focused on things like the status of support from sponsors. We were told that the executive team was running daily financial reports to inform their decision-making, but those reports were not shared with the board despite our requests.
Okay, I'll stop it there. It goes on for another up until 11 or 12 minutes, and it's all full of bombshells. And she continues further, but the real meat of it is another 2 minutes. I'm not going to play that right now. Link is in the description if you want to watch it. But it's incredible what has been allowed to happen under the guise of giving money to this charity. It's incredible. It's incredible the corruption that was kind of swept under the rug, right? Like the entire board was replaced. Less three people, one in Canada and two in the United States. The entire board. And we was in massive financial trouble even before the pandemic. So how is this agency the only one that could possibly do it? Here's Vasi Kopoulos asking Minister Chegar, but why do they need $30 million front loaded? Because we paid $30 million May 5th, the week of May 5th. The government gave them $30 million then, $33 million, and then made the decision on May 22nd that we was going to get it. So they'd been doing work for weeks before, and I reported on that yesterday. So here's Vasi Kopoulos saying, if they were so good, why did they need that money up front? I thought they were ready to deliver this program. And the tweet that goes along with this video is, I watched this 4 times and I've honestly no opinion with what Minister Chegar is trying to say. If there's someone with an expertise in political blaggleflab, I would very much appreciate a translation. I happen to have that, sir. And the translation is, here we go.
Is because, and the reason it jumped out at me was because your government has made the point frequently over the past number of weeks that we was the only organization who could, and that was the information you got from the public service, the only organization that was capable of administering this program. But if they were so capable, why did they need all this money up front? And why did they even need $43.5 million if they truly could, on their own, administer all of this?
So I think based on the information that's being provided, it demonstrates that the public service did consider many different organizations. And it's important to note that this is an innovative program, one of which has not ever been.
So she's just dodging the question. You can listen. It's 4 minutes of her dodging the question. It's all of it is, oh, what did you say? I'm going to talk about the thing that I want to talk about. Okay, this is Margaret Trudeau being paid the conflicting stories that emerge from that. And we're going to get to Pierre Polieviere as well before the end of this. I thought he was earlier, but it'll be this one. Oh, okay, so this is out of order. We'll get to Margaret Trudeau in a minute. Here's Pierre Polieviere, and I'm going to cue this up on the YouTube. Hold on. Okay, well, this took a little longer than I anticipated, but here we are. Here it is. And here is Mr. Polieviere asking, and let's make sure it's at regular speed and not double speed. I had to look at all his testimony. I didn't know. I knew it was the last question, but I thought it was the last question in the second series. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Here we go.
So now, Mr.
Last
Chair,
question, Mr. Polieviere.
Have you hired private, and you or anyone acting on your behalf, including a law firm, ever hired private investigators that may have looked into media personalities like Mr. Jesse Brown or reporter Jaron Kerr?
Sir, if I may say, with due respect, you are reaching to the bottom of a barrel if Jesse Brown is now who you're quoting to bring. I
asked you a question, and you're not answering it.
Well, I can answer it very clearly, sir. There was a public exchange between Jesse Brown and the lawyer.
You're not answering it.
Sir, I am. Yes, Mr. Chair. I'm going to answer very clearly with 2 points. Number one, there's a public exchange on Mr. Brown's.
Did your law firm hire a private investigator to look into it?
Mr. Polieviere, your questions are done. Mr. Keilburger has the right to respond, and we will
just call you back if you don't answer.
And we will conclude with Ms. Kotrakis, I believe, Mr. Keilburger.
Sir, we will happily submit to you the Twitter exchange between the lawyer who was involved in the matter and Jesse Brown. It is on Jesse Brown's Twitter. It answers the question decisively. And sir, frankly, we've answered your question.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. What's your point of order?
Point of order, Mr. Chair. The standing orders clearly state that witnesses are required to answer the questions put by witnesses or risk being found in contempt. The question was yes or no whether the witness's law firm hired a private investigator to look into Jesse Brown and Jaron Kerr. The witness then refers to a Twitter exchange, and I'm not interested in looking at Twitter. I'm looking for an answer. So yes or no, did your law firm hire a private investigator to look into these reporters? Yes or no?
Sir, we've been here for 4 hours, and now you're threatening us. We just feel that this is not appropriate. There is a very clear public record on this.
Yes or no? Exchange. Yes or no?
We will go to.
Yes or no?
We will go to Ms. Kotrakis.
Yes.
Final question.
What isn't the chair supposed to get answers? I mean, or hold them in contempt, right? So if they refuse to answer the question, they should be held in contempt. And the answer is, of course, yes. Here is Jesse Brown. The first indication that you've won an argument or you've asked an uncomfortable question of a Liberal is that they refuse to answer and then get incredulous that you dare ask. I can't believe you would ask us. We've answered your question. The answer is obvious. I don't need to say it. How dare you, sir? Right? Greta eyes. Here's Jesse Brown. He says, what have we here? Peter Downward, counsel for We Charity, hiring a security firm to investigate me and who is Jaron? Jaron is a co-host or somebody. Oh, he formerly with Canada Land, Toronto Star. So tell me, the lawyer, exactly why did your client want my home address, the name of my son, and the name of the school my kids attend? And here's the legal document. Here's the scope of investigation, etc. And the whole thread. So the answer is somebody hired them. Somebody hired the lawyer, the counsel for We. And it's very interesting that the first place that Craig Keilburger goes to, that was Craig, right? Yeah, I think so. Craig Keilburger goes to is to say, oh, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. I don't think I don't think this is bottom of the barrel. I don't. I think that this is certainly valid evidence to base a valid question on, a question that was amateurishly dodged, just terribly, terribly dodged. It almost looked like somebody was in the background with a whiteboard that says, dodge question, don't answer that one. That will make you liable, or that will admit guilt, or something to that effect. Don't answer. Right? They were very sure about that one. And the grins, I don't know. Okay, moving into Margaret Trudeau. So Margaret Trudeau teaser, Margaret Trudeau, the rest of it. Give me a break, says Diane Murphy. How long do you think it took Justin Trudeau and the Keilburgers to come up with that story? Auxiliary events. But Jerry Butts works on it. Okay, the former chair of We Charity's board of directors says the board was explicitly told that speakers at the organization's popular youth events, known as We Days, were not paid for speaking. That was another one of these, right? Eddie, what? They're not paid? So, uh-oh, my computer's got to catch up. I've got a lot of tabs today. All right, and here, moving into the Keilburgers actually said this. What Margaret Trudeau, for example, had in fact been paid for was hosting after parties, attending receptions, and holding autograph sessions for the same day as the speeches. How? I don't think anybody was... Now, I worked at We Day in, I think, 2013, 2014, but like both those years back to back, and then maybe even 2012, 2013. Yeah, that's maybe more accurate. And nobody was hanging out for autographs, I don't think. Not from my point of view anyway. Maybe they were hanging around to talk, but there wasn't an autograph table. There was no signing. Here is Stephen Taylor sharing this exchange. I'm not going to scrub to find this one. This is just going to Margaret Trudeau wasn't paid until after November 2015. What other event happened for Margaret Trudeau in 2015? Late, say like October 2015. Here we go.
How much was she paid, Miss Margaret Trudeau paid for speaking before November of 2015?
So we did not engage her before November of 2015, from my best understanding.
Okay, so she was only ever paid after November of 2015.
It was at that point, sir, where We Days continued to grow, and we needed somebody to speak specifically on the issue of mental health. And she came not as Madame Trudeau, she came as somebody who's very focused on that issue, something that's really relevant. If I'm not mistaken, 1 in 5 Canadians. 1 in 5 Canadians, and it's a big part of what we do. We have to...
That is clumsily trying to turn the conversation to your talking point instead of answering the question, right? 1 in 5. Oh yeah, 1 in 5. 1 in 5. That's who we're helping, 20%. Ooh. Here's Brian Lilly. He says, moments ago, Mark Keilburger just informed the Commons Finance Committee that in addition to the $312,000 paid to the Margaret Trudeau for speaking at We Day events, she was reimbursed an additional $167,944 in expenses. So a total of $479,944. And that $167,944, that's expenses. That's reimbursement. That's not taxable, right? Like, so that's, you don't tell Revenue Canada about minor expenses like that. That's just expenses. I wonder, my first house, the house that I purchased when I was in college, cost less than this amount of money. How do you get that much money in expenses? What are you expensing? Are you calling the liquor store and having the entire thing delivered? Like, what is going on? I wonder what the timeline is. I have no idea. Here's Jesse Brown, and he says the Keilburgers again say they did not pay Margaret Trudeau to speak at We Days, but for other things. Here is one of her invoices. It's for her speaker's fee from her speaking agency. No other service is billed. Date of the service is the date of the We Day she spoke at. I mean, that's kind of incriminating. Did you lie under oath to a parliamentary committee? Isn't there something like wrong with that? Or are we just not caring about that now in Canada? I'm being kind of sarcastic, but that's a legitimate question. Do we not care about that? Because that's what they're doing. Blatantly, and with smirks on their face. Anyway, here's Vivian Cruz, and she says, I'm surprised that Craig Keilburger just testified they don't have staff that works specifically on government relations, because in November they advertised to hire someone as manager of government relations. No mention of stakeholder relations. Here's the job ad. And it says we at the top there, you see? And hold on, I'll click on it and then I can point. Here's we, it says at the top ad, and it says big bold letters, manager, government relations. They are not registered as lobbyists. The Parti Québécois, the Bloc, took them to task on that. They said, are you registered as lobbyists? And they said, no. And they said, could we have the name of every minister you've spoken to for the last 2 years? Whoops. See, this is another one of these moments, right? I was like, oh, you're so done. So, well done. So I ask again, do things like lying to parliamentary committees not matter anymore? Because it seems like it doesn't matter anymore. Here's Kian Bexton. He says, shameless. Instead of asking questions of the Keilburger brothers, Liberal MP Koustrakis ceded her valuable committee time to the disgraced witnesses to clear up any misconceptions. Completely open floor. This is stunning. It was kind of interesting to watch. I was like, huh. And if you were watching the Barr hearings, the Democrats continually asked Barr questions, and then as he was trying to answer them, they would say, I'm taking my time back from him, and then they would just continue diatribing about the thing they wanted the clip in the news to say. They didn't want him to talk. It was very interesting. Anyway, here's Royal Bank of Canada. They cut ties with We. That was yesterday. July 28th. Today is the 29th. And here is Liberal MPs have become afraid of calling out the leader as this is seen as a career-limiting move. They said that anyone who makes this mistake is seen as a non-team player and should essentially forget about any future promotion. Yeah, you're not going to get promoted. I don't know. Is this government going to last through to the next election? Like, this is a big deal. Make no mistake about this. This is a very, very big deal. Here's We putting feelers out in China. This is HOC staffer. He says, meanwhile, Me2We has operated in China as a joint Singo foreign venture since 2012, according to its Chinese website, catering to much more affluent school children. Nothing says charity like We partnering with the Chinese government to teach rich kids. This is a National Post article, but I just wanted to show you the connections from over there. And the last article, or the last tab on We today is Brian Lilly. He says, earlier, Craig Keilburger said his face would go pale if half of what has been said about him were true. He obviously does not know what he looks like. I thought that was hilarious. I was like, good job, Brian. Honestly, this is a big, big scandal. And Harper's government was taken down for much less. Martin's government was taken down for much less. And the fact that this is being managed this way is interesting to watch. I mean, the opposition is set to anoint McKay the leader. If you've seen the official polls, right? I've seen lots of Twitter polls that's got Leslyn Lewis or Sloan. I think you're dreaming if you think that either one of them has any shot at winning. Honestly, it's going to be McKay. And if it's not McKay, it's O'Toole because they, for whatever reason, couldn't get McKay in there. I think it's going to be McKay. So this whole thing is not going to stop. The government's in complete disarray. We don't have anybody who's really ready to take the leadership of the country. I would trust Scheer more than I would trust McKay. McKay's a bad Scheer. And I don't trust Scheer. So this is a big scandal, but the whole government is in complete it's a complete mess. I have no idea who would take control. And our military, Vance is retiring, but Vance is a Trudeau acolyte. I don't know what the military looks like, but based on the Mark Norman trial, I don't think we're in good shape, right? And there's more news as well. Like there's 5 more tabs. We're gonna go through them because we're only at 20 minutes. I've got time. I hope you're interested in watching. Hold on. Here we go. Remember a few years ago when the teen in Kingston was arrested on terrorism charges? It was ISIS. Yeah, here we go. Ontario teen worked with attack planner in Syria to plot bombings for ISIS. A teenager admitted in Ontario court on Tuesday he had pledged allegiance to the so-called Islamic State and worked with an attack planner based in Syria to plot bombings. From his home in Kingston, the Syrian-Canadian youth collaborated through social media with a figure known as Abu Umair Ibram, who encouraged him and guided him in his bomb making. Nightclubs, churches, and sporting venues were discussed as possible targets. While he was preoccupied with bombs, police also found materials referring to poisons, vehicular attacks, and burning people inside their homes. All those ways are good to kill Christians, according to an audio file uncovered by police. The RCMP said almost nothing after the high-profile Kingston terrorism arrest in January 2019, refusing to respond to questions about the suspect's motive and never acknowledging it was an ISIS plot. But the guilty plea provided the first public look at the troubling details of the case, one of a growing number involving Canadian ISIS supporters. Yeah, and speaking of violence in our cities and across Canada, here's John Tory. It says, GTA mayors and police chiefs call for smarter investment on unacceptable gun crime, basically. Toronto during a 4-month period, police arrested 97 people who were out on bail for firearms offenses. And it gets worse in the article. Here's the Toronto Sun article highlighting just how much increase over even the worst year in the 2000s, like the 2000 to 2010, is now, and even an average year in 2014, just before Justin Trudeau took over, comparatively. And I don't like reading statistics out, but these statistics are kind of crazy. This was published July 18th, 2020. Goldstein, politician silent as Toronto gun crime skyrockets. In 2005, the city, once known as Toronto the Good, was badly shaken by what became known as the Summer of the Gun, in which there were 262 shootings and firearms discharges on our streets, with 215 victims injured or killed. Last year, in what now passes for the new normal in Toronto, shootings and firearms discharges were up 88%, 492, and the number of victims injured or killed up 32%, 284 compared to 2005, both at their highest levels in 16 years. Despite the record levels of gun violence last year, shootings and firearms discharges so far this year are up 18%, 234, compared to this time in 2019, 198, while the number of victims injured or killed is down 4%, 107 versus 111. The number killed up is up 33%, 24 versus 18. As alarming as these numbers are, they pale in comparison to what has happened on the streets of Toronto since 2014, when there were 177 shootings and firearms discharges and 103 victims injured or killed. Last year, shootings and firearms discharges were up 178%, 492 compared to 2014, while the numbers of people injured or killed was up 176%, compared to 2014, 284 to 180 or 103, and then I won't give the other one because it's like hearing baseball statistics. That's incredible, and they're not doing anything about it, and that's the unfortunate part. Speaking of gun crime, yesterday I reported that they were still doing a public review, and as the afternoon wore on and the Keilburgers got paler, Mr. Blair announced that they would have a public inquiry. Here's Robin Urbach, and she says, the feds are going to yield to calls for a public inquiry eventually. Oh, this is the wrong one. I deleted the other ones. I had like 6 in series. But yeah, hold on. I'll get the one that says they're actually doing a public inquiry. Here's Robin Urbach again. She says, good, but man, the gall of writing. We've listened to Nova Scotians after decidedly ignoring them a week ago. And this is Minister Blair's letter. And he says, the situation requires that our government work diligently with all those affected. Blah, 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 public inquiry, basically. Here it is. The Government of Canada is now proceeding with a full public inquiry under the authority of the Inquiries Act, RSC 1985. So that gives it teeth, that gives it weight, that gives it authority. So that's what people were calling for. This is Doug Ford signaling his Marxism. I don't know. He lost me a little while ago. I don't know who else to support or vote for. I don't know how to fight what's going on. I mean, it's how do you deal with a government that's pushing this garbage? This stuff is racism. This stuff is shrouding the passage of racist laws. This stuff is not appropriate. And if Doug Ford has a conservative hair on his head or tooth in his head, I don't know what's another hair on his head or whatever, that's conservative, then he wouldn't be going down this path. I think this is totally the wrong way to go for the Ford government, and it makes me angry. So this is Doug Ford on Twitter yesterday, and he says, our government has absolutely zero tolerance for racism, hate, and discrimination of all forms. As part of our commitment to fight this behavior and support all communities, we've introduced the anti-hate and anti-racism grants. Anti-hate and anti-racism, I can illustrate for you very clearly. I responded, but it's not high on the list, I guess. But the Upper Grand District School Board is trying to institute policies based on critical race theory, and critical race theory is where this anti-hate and anti-racism language come from. I would love to hear the definition of anti-racism that the Ford government and the Ontario government is currently working with. This is not good at all. And how to fight it? I'm looking for another political party to rise that's actually conservative and actually is ready to do this on the provincial level, right? Where are they? They will be called racist. They will be tarred and feathered, and they will be destroyed by anybody who's willing to take liberal money to destroy them, which is a lot of people, believe it or not. So it's a catch-22. It's very, very difficult. We're in a bad situation right now. Here's the last thing. There's Minister McKenna, not social distancing, to introduce something in Brampton yesterday. Yeah, do as I say, not as I do. These people think that either the rules don't apply to them or that everybody's drunk the Kool-Aid. And I mean, that's just simply not true. So this is going to be interesting to watch how this all unfolds. They're doubling down and tripling down on white supremacy being the root of all evil, while ignoring illegal gun crime and mass illegal guns and mass shootings and all sorts of stuff in Toronto, gang crime. And how is that going to play out for the larger public when the law only applies to certain people at certain times, depending on unpredictable circumstances? You have no idea if the law is going to apply to you or not. And, I have no idea, right? I have no idea. People have accosted me. I got the most aggressive Karen I've ever got the other day about masks. The guy yelled across 2 aisles of groceries saying, hey, that guy's not wearing a mask. And then he complained to the guy stacking bananas behind me. Did you see this guy's not wearing a mask? And I said, well, he knows the rules. The rules are that there are exemptions. I said, 2 of the exemptions apply to me. So I'm just doing my shopping here, man. Then he walked beside me saying, this guy's not social distancing. And I looked at him and I said, this is very odd behavior for an adult. You know that? And then I turned around and got my lettuce. And I guess he got upset and walked off. But I mean, they don't need to create laws when they just tell people it's mandatory. I saw that the libraries in Guelph are opening, and they're opening August 9th, I think, and they're making masks mandatory. What are the criteria to repeal this mandatory mask law? We've got 1 person in hospital. What are the criteria? We have emergency laws that have automatic sunsets. Why does an emergency mandatory mask law not have an automatic sunset? Nobody will answer this question for me. I don't understand this. It's so frustrating. It's very, very frustrating. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. And have a wonderful, wonderful day.